I was pulled from there to go up to the school and was briefed on my way up to this school what casualties and fatalities there were, and saw many friends who, boy, were truly experiencing the impact of what they had seen.
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty and sacrifice
of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? Time for another episode of Behind the Uniforms today. Special Friends and Family and Supporters edition. I'm not going to introduce you. You tell them all who you are.
Sure. I'm Phyllis DeJoya, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Manchester. I work primarily with first responders and am in development of a treatment facility, an intensive outpatient program actually for first responders and their families.
Awesome. So for those of you who have never seen this show before, the way that we roll is that the guests bring some whiskey for the whiskey wall. We share a drink. Usually people will either share two stories. They tell us about a good day or tell us about a bad day, or they talk a little bit about what they're doing in the community so we could bring awareness to that organization and try and help some people. So first of all, nice job on the whiskey.
Yes, thanks to one of my very good friends, State Police Troy, and another friend, John, who sent me pictures of whiskey that I needed to go to the liquor store with.
Excellent. Well, you'll have to tell them. Obviously, they have good taste in whiskey, so you'll have to invite them on the show for us. All right, so give everybody some context and background. Tell them all what you're doing and what they need to know.
Sure. So Honor Wellness Center is meant to be an intensive outpatient treatment program for trauma, mental health, and addictions.
Gotcha.
All kinds of addictions. And in treating first responders, we're referring to police, fire, military, corrections, dispatchers, and EMS.
Gotcha.
So that's, of course, represented in the logo of the 5 colors. Of what we look at with treating first responders and EMS is that there's really not been anything in Connecticut for a continuum of care.
Got it.
So when they, for example, may go to an inpatient program, they're going out of state for those specific programs that treat first responders.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing in Connecticut.
Sure.
And of course, Connecticut has gun legislation that many feel threatened that their job may not be secure if they're going into a program and may receive a diagnosis that could preclude them from coming back to their job. So they're going out of state for inpatient care. And unfortunately, when they come back to Connecticut, they're really coming back to either an intensive outpatient program that treats a general population that doesn't serve first responders specifically. So what we're looking to do with Honor Wellness Center is have a one-stop shopping continuum of care that they can come to or come back to if they're out of state. That's one side of the program. With that program, within that structure, is group sessions as well as individual sessions. And the group sessions are facilitated by a clinician that's specifically trained to work with first responders, partnered with a recovered first responder. So every single clinical contact that would happen is always co-facilitated by a recovered first responder, so that there's that peer support right from the get-go, whether it's trauma, addictions, or mental health issues. And we'll have the case management piece 6 months to a year after they end their programming with us for the intensive outpatient treatment side.
That's awesome. I mean, I've heard of so many guys who have come onto the show and they said after, last week, I got a call from a buddy who's a cop at 2:00 in the morning.
Absolutely.
He was going through some really rough stuff, so I rushed him down to Rhode Island because
Yes.
I knew that if I brought him to Rhode Island, he wouldn't have to worry about being stuck on desk duty and losing his gun or worse. And it's sort of a sad place where we are in society, from my perspective, where we're finally starting to recognize the implications of post-traumatic stress, not just among veterans, but among first responders in a more cumulative fashion. And yet the resources that are sometimes available put them at fear for their ability to provide for their family. It sounds like that's something that's obviously near and dear to you guys. Where did the inspiration come from? Because you don't just wake up one day and say, this is the niche that I'm getting into.
Exactly. About 15 years ago, I started working with an employee assistance program as a social worker,
Yep.
doing case management. And with that employee assistance program, they had really a niche market. And that was working specifically with first responders. They had approximately 250 contracts throughout the state of Connecticut with municipalities as well as state agencies for public safety.
Got it.
So with that came, a trial by fire. But I learned so much
Sure.
from them, because while they may not as a culture trust right away, especially a civilian,
Sure.
a fluffy bunny social worker who doesn't know the culture coming in entirely, when they trust, they're all in.
Sure.
Their passion for what they do is clear and evident. And so if your agenda coming in to say, hey, educate me,
Yeah.
educate me so we can work together, they're all in with that. And so that after 9/11, there was much more openness, I believe,
Yep.
to considering post-traumatic stress
Sure.
as, this is a real deal.
Yep.
And then my work with the state police began in 2010, managing that contract, and that became an immersion with them in the more traumatic incidents. So, for example, I would be dispatched with them to more traumatic incidents,
Got it.
including Sandy Hook, which, as a clinician, that rocked my world.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And being there that morning through the weekend, the education that I received, truly, as a clinician, as a mom, because I had two little girls who went to a brick elementary school, seeing and experiencing these professionals who were my friends,
Right.
and seeing them and what they were experiencing from an emotional perspective. This was so far beyond the range of human experience that they needed help, but they didn't know the first thing about what they were experiencing was normal to an abnormal event.
Sure.
And so we began the debriefings process. The peer support programs really started coming out in force, working together. What we did see is a tremendous increase in, if there were addictive behaviors prior, that was magnified. If there were difficulties in marriage, mental health issues prior, that was magnified.
Right.
And we saw some really very difficult times for them. So the work that we began doing was that light bulb.
I've got to ask, how did you process things? Because there you are so focused on helping others that I'm sure that this was an extremely traumatic experience for you as well, especially as a mom and as someone who's trying to step back and help others. How did you handle it?
I think the compartmentalization process, it was a necessary tool as a clinician to work through it.
Sure.
Because going to the scene that morning, I arrived at the checkpoint, and the first person I saw had been in my office earlier that morning for a session. And he said, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. I don't want you to see this." And I said, "Listen, it's not your job to protect me.
Yeah.
I need to come in and do this work with you." So that's what we did. So I went in. It was still very early. The scene was, of course, secured. And there were still people taking their children from the school, well, the firehouse at that point. There were still children without parents and parents without children. And my job really kind of expanded that morning to checking in with my point person. He said, "Do you know what's happened?" And I said, "Honestly, I haven't. All I got was it was an active shooter situation, and I just got a call that the scene was secured." And he said, "Okay, listen, this is what I can tell you now, but we're going to need you in the firehouse, and we're also going to need you up at this school." And I said, "That's fine. I just need to know a framework of
Right,
what we're
I'm
looking
going
at."
to.
Yeah. So my first contact was with the children that didn't have parents. And there were many officers already in there just sitting with the children. I had met a little girl who had her bear, and she and the bear had a couple of blood spots on them. And I sat down on the floor with her, and she sat down with me. She really was, I think, a normal child's response. Very overwhelmed, just kind of looking for an adult to comfort. And so she sat down on my lap, and one of the officers that had been over to the side was a friend of mine. And he came over and he said, "I love your bear. That's such a cool bear. Can I put this little pin on your bear?" And she said, "Sure." And she's still sitting on my lap, and she kind of snuggled into me. And I was holding her, and I looked up at the officer, and he just shook his head. And I held his hand for a minute, and I said, "I'll see you later." And we just parted at that point. I went to sit with other children, and then another officer came and said, "Hey, listen, we need you in the back room." And the back room was where there were parents that didn't have children. And so very quickly thereafter, one of the majors, wonderful, wonderful man, had made the decision that there would be liaisons that would be brought in to work with those parents.
Sure.
I was pulled from there to go up to the school and was briefed on my way up to the school what casualties and fatalities there were, and saw many, many friends who, boy, were truly experiencing the impact of what they had seen.
Sure.
And, Kyle, I think from that, it was an understanding of, okay, this scene to me as a clinician, as a human being, was completely overstimulating. Helicopters flying overhead, blood spots on the driveway, bullet holes in the cars. It was a very overstimulating, surreal experience. And every person I saw, I'm known to be a hugger. I'm Italian. I'm known to be a hugger, so I'm hugging everyone. And they're just shaking their heads, and they're saying, "Don't go in the school. Just don't go in the school." And I realized, yeah, that won't be good.
Yeah.
And of course, my point person would not let me because he knew, he had already been in the school. He knew what I would see if I did. So we made a decision that I would stay at the school. The major crimes van came and they set up all of their equipment. I stayed on the periphery as just presence, really, because a clinician's presence at a scene is really more about just presence.
Sure.
We can't take their head out of the game.
Yeah.
Their head needs to be in the game so
for sure.
that we can be there later. Or, hey, can I get you a bottle of water? Or what do you need? You know, or just I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
You know, so that, I think, certainly the greatest education for me with them, in really understanding the culture itself had not bred a sense of human response, normal human response to an abnormal event.
Sure.
That was one event. They see so much on a daily basis, all first responders.
Right.
They run in where we run out.
Right.
They protect us and serve us in ways we don't even want to know, truly.
You know, one of the things that I think is so important for people to realize, and this is one of the points of why we're doing this, is that you know, it's so easy and so quick for horrible situations like this to be very quickly politicized.
Yes.
And for police as a whole
Yes.
to be very quickly politicized. We see in the media all the time, you know, people talking about how evil and horrible cops are. The immediate reaction whenever there's a shooting, there's conversations about gun control. I think we need to remove all of the politics from this and understand that the police officers who responded to this and the other supporters that respond to this, so many are parents.
They are parents and husbands and wives, their children and brothers and sisters. They are human and they are going home, and some of them do talk with their families, many do not. And
I mean, how can you?
Sure.
How can you? You see that many bodies of
Sure.
children
Exactly.
on the floor. Like, how do you talk about that? Where do you begin?
And that is the hardest part, because if you yourself haven't accepted, okay, this is my holy crap moment and I don't even know what to do with it. How am I supposed to communicate this with someone else? So when I had many of the first responders coming to see me individually, their first instinct was to protect me. Their first instinct was to not tell me, you know, everything. And I said, listen, here's the deal. You need to take me there. But you were there, was their response. No, I wasn't. I need you to take me there so we can get in, do the work we need to do. You leave it here. You leave it here with me so that when you go home, you connect with your family. You allow yourself to be human and you let it be okay if you cry. You let it be okay that when Christmas comes and you're thinking about those presents that were underneath the tree for those kids that will never open them, you cry. That you look at your own children and your husbands and wives, you hug them, you connect, you have the emotional intimacy that needs to happen, rather than feeling shameful or guilty that you've got this darkness in you. And so Honor Wellness Center is really about making it okay, making it normal to be human, that this is a safe place for you and your family, that we can say, come on in, no matter when it is.
Awesome.
And what we need to do is provide that continuum of care so that if they're at the department, agency, troop, wherever they are, and they're really having a rough time, and they walk in the front door, it's not going to be, okay, you know what, we'll call you and you can come in 3 days.
Yep.
It'll be when they walk in, okay, listen, we'll get somebody to talk with you.
Awesome.
Give us about 15, 20 minutes. We're going to get somebody to talk with you. Would you like to sit in on a group? We can do that. We'll also have therapy dogs, so we're working with Brad Cole.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm training my dog, although it's going to take him a couple of years, I'll be honest. He's a crazy little 2-year-old German Shepherd right now.
If Brad's helping, he might speed up that process.
Well, Brad is awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had him on a show, and
Yes.
he's great. How
Yeah.
can people learn more?
Okay, so definitely by calling me. My name again is Phyllis DeJoya, and my cell phone 860-919-9762. I give that to everyone. It's online.
Awesome. Devon, make sure to edit that into this, and we'll put the website up.
HonorWellnessCenter.org is
Awesome.
the website. We also have a GoFundMe page because we are in development process
Yep.
right now. We're
Yep.
not open yet. We are hoping to open late spring, early summer.
Awesome.
We're bringing on board a professional fundraising team and development team so
Awesome.
that we can do some grant writing.
Awesome.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing these stories. I hope that all of you guys take the 2 seconds that it's going to take to hit the share button, because we could just save one more life by doing so. So thank you,
you.
and cheers to you. God bless America.
Thank you.